Chapter 1: The Making of a Legend. Intro. Have you ever wondered how one man could rise from a dusty Nigerian town to become the richest man in all of Africa? A man whose name, Aliko Dangote, has become a symbol of wealth, ambition, and unstoppable vision. He wasn't born into royalty. He didn't win a lottery. And he didn't stumble upon some miracle idea that made him rich overnight. No, Dangote built his empire brick by brick, deal by deal, and risk by risk, until he became a one-man powerhouse that moves billions of dollars and influences the fate of nations. But here's what most people never ask: how did he really do it? What gave this man the audacity to believe he could dominate industries controlled by foreigners for decades? And how did he turn the simple act of trading sugar and cement into a multi-billion-dollar dynasty? Today, we're not just talking about numbers or Forbes rankings. We're diving deep into the real story, the mindset, the moments, and the moves that transformed Aliko Dangote from an ordinary young man into a symbol of African capitalism. But before we go any further, if you believe Africa deserves more stories like this, stories that inspire the next generation of dreamers and builders, then pause for a second. Hit that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to How They Made It, the channel where we uncover the real stories behind great success. If you've already subscribed, thank you, truly. You're part of a growing family that believes in the power of ambition. And if you haven't yet, what are you waiting for? You're literally seconds away from discovering how a single vision changed the economic history of an entire continent. So grab your seat, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you look at money, business, and destiny. This is how Aliko Dangote became Africa's richest man. Chapter 2: Humble Beginnings, Seeds of an Empire. Gentle African instrumental begins. The tone becomes reflective, calm, but powerful. Every great story begins somewhere small, sometimes in a place the world would never expect. For Aliko Dangote, that place was Kano, in northern Nigeria, a city rich in trade, culture, and history. But long before skyscrapers carried his name, before Forbes ever printed his picture, there was just a boy, curious, observant, and hungry for opportunity. Dangote was born in 1957, into a respected Muslim family of merchants. His grandfather, Alhaji Alhassan Dantata, was once the richest man in West Africa, a titan in his own right. So yes, Dangote had access to wealth and comfort, but make no mistake, that doesn't guarantee success. Because what Dangote did differently wasn't about what he inherited, it was about what he imagined. Even as a child, he was fascinated by business. He once said, "I can remember when I was in primary school, I would go and buy cartons of sweets, and I would sell them just to make money." Think about that. While other children played football or chased kites, young Aliko was already chasing profit margins. He didn't do it because he had to. He did it because something inside him found joy in creating value. That's the difference between curiosity and calling. As he grew older, Dangote studied at the Al-Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt, where he learned about business, economics, and the discipline of strategic thinking. But more importantly, he learned about vision, the ability to see what others overlook. When he returned to Nigeria in 1977, he was just 20 years old, ambitious, restless, and burning with ideas. He borrowed 500,000 Nigerian nairas, about $3,000 back then, from his uncle, Alhaji Sanusi Dantata, to start a small trading business. Now pause for a moment and think about that. In a world where many people dream of a perfect start, Dangote didn't wait for millions. He started small, but he thought big. He began importing and selling essential commodities: rice, sugar, cement, and salt. Simple products. Everyday items. Nothing glamorous. But Dangote understood something powerful. If you control what people need, you'll never go out of business. His trucks moved across the country. His supply chains expanded. His margins grew. Within just a few years, the young trader had become one of Nigeria's most trusted suppliers of basic goods. Now, let's stop for a second and think deeply. What kind of mindset does it take to turn a few $1,000s into a multi-million-dollar enterprise before age 30? Dangote didn't rely on luck. He relied on discipline. He reinvested every profit. While others were buying cars, he was buying more goods. While others were showing off success, he was building systems. He once said, "I always make sure I get my profit before I spend it." A simple rule, but one that separates the dreamers from the doers. By the early 1980s, Dangote's trading company had grown so large that it became one of the biggest suppliers in Nigeria. But deep down, he realized something. If I want to be truly wealthy, I can't just trade in other people's products. I need to produce my own. That was the moment the seed of the Dangote empire was planted. A vision born from one truth: to control the market, you must control the source. This wasn't just business. It was the beginning of an industrial revolution, one that would eventually change the face of Africa's economy. And this is where Dangote began to evolve from a trader into a manufacturer, a builder, a man who wouldn't just sell cement, he'd make it, who wouldn't just distribute sugar, he'd refine it. But before we get there, let me ask you something. If you had the chance to start small today, to plant a seed like Dangote once did, would you take it? Or would you wait until life becomes perfect, until you have enough? Because here's the truth, there's never a perfect time. There's only the time you decide to begin. And that's what made Dangote different. He began. In the next chapter, we'll dive into how this young trader took one bold step that changed everything. The moment that transformed a local business into a continental empire. He didn't just make a deal, he made history. Chapter 3, The Turning Point, Dangote's Big Break. Low suspenseful music begins. The tone feels like something big is about to happen. Every success story has that one defining moment, that invisible line between surviving and thriving. For Aliko Dangote, that moment came in the 1980s, when the world around him was changing faster than ever. Nigeria's economy was unpredictable, the oil boom had begun to fade, and the country was struggling to stabilize. But while many businessmen panicked, Dangote saw opportunity in the chaos. He realized something most people missed, that the future of Africa wouldn't be built by traders who depended on imports, but by industrialists who could produce locally. He once said, "To succeed in business, you must think long-term, not just about today or tomorrow, but about the next 20 years. And that was exactly what he did. Dangote took a massive risk. He began to build manufacturing plants, starting with sugar, salt, and flour. Why these products? Because every home in Nigeria used them daily. He understood the golden rule of business: find what people can't live without, and make it better, cheaper, and closer to them. But getting there wasn't easy. There were no smooth roads, no steady electricity, and no guaranteed support. Building factories in Nigeria at that time was like building castles in a storm. Still, Dangote pushed forward. He didn't wait for perfect conditions. He created them. A brief pause, softer tone. He leveraged relationships, yes, but not in the way people imagine. He wasn't just cozying up to politicians. He was aligning himself with national needs. The government wanted to reduce imports and strengthen local industries, and Dangote became the man with a plan. He offered a vision that matched Nigeria's economic goals: local production, job creation, and industrial self-sufficiency. That's how he earned trust, not just through connections, but through alignment of value. By the late 1990s, the Dangote Group had become a dominant force in commodities. But his next move, would change everything. He entered the cement industry. Now, cement may sound boring to some, but Dangote saw what others didn't. Every building, every road, every dream of progress begins with cement. At the time, Nigeria imported most of its cement. The costs were high, and the shortages were constant. Dangote saw an empire hidden inside a bag of powder. He took another massive leap. He built his own cement factories, starting with Abajana cement plant, which would later become one of the largest in the world. It was a bold bet. Billions of naira on the line. And many said he was crazy. Why take such a risk in a country where infrastructure is so poor? But Dangote didn't see risk, he saw control. He understood that whoever controls the foundation controls the future. And soon, his factories were producing millions of tons of cement, enough not only for Nigeria but for export across Africa. He began expanding into countries like Ethiopia, Zambia, Senegal, and South Africa. The name Dangote became a symbol of reliability, a brand synonymous with African-made excellence. But there's something deeper behind all this success. It wasn't just cement or sugar or salt. It was consistency. Dangote never chased trends. He never built businesses he didn't understand. He focused on essentials, the things people will always need. Think about that. While the world was chasing flashy tech startups, Dangote quietly built the backbone of Africa's economy. That's not just business genius, that's long-term vision. Now here's the lesson most people miss. Success isn't built overnight. It's built over decades of decisions that may look boring, but compound into greatness. Dangote didn't build for fame, he built for function. He didn't chase applause, he chased impact. And it's why today, every bag of cement that builds a home, every cube of sugar that sweetens a meal, carries the fingerprints of his vision. This was the turning point. The moment Aliko Dangote stopped being just a businessman and became an empire builder. But the story doesn't stop here. Because while his companies were expanding, so was his philosophy, his mindset. The way he thought, acted, and made decisions became the invisible foundation behind his billions. And in the next chapter, we'll go inside that mind, the rare psychological framework that separates billionaires from the rest of the world. Chapter 4, Building the Empire, Cement, Sugar, and Strategy. There's a moment in every entrepreneur's journey where the game changes, where you stop playing to survive, and start playing to dominate. For Aliko Dangote, that moment had arrived. He wasn't just importing and selling anymore, he was building the backbone of Africa. He had already conquered the trading business, but now, he wanted to own the factories, the distribution, and even the raw materials. He wanted total control, from production to packaging to delivery. This wasn't greed. It was strategy. Dangote understood something most people overlook. You can't build generational wealth from margins. You build it from ownership. And that became his guiding principle. So he didn't just produce sugar, he built Dangote Sugar Refinery, one of the largest in Africa. He didn't just sell cement, he built Dangote Cement, the continent's most profitable manufacturing company. He didn't just trade salt, he industrialized it. Every move was intentional. Every investment had a purpose. But let's be clear, none of this came easy. Building an empire in Africa means battling more than competition. You battle power outages, poor roads, corruption, bureaucracy, and sometimes, doubt. Still, Dangote pressed on. He reinvested almost all his profits, year after year, while others were buying jets, building mansions, and living lavishly. Dangote stayed focused. He once said, "I built a conglomerate and emerged the richest black man in the world in 2008, but it didn't happen overnight. It took over 30 years. 30 years. 3 decades of consistency. 3 decades of grinding while others gave up." In the early 2000s, Dangote's companies started dominating Nigeria's economy. His cement factories were supplying nearly every major construction project in the country. His sugar refinery was producing over 70% of Nigeria's sugar needs. And his salt, flour, and pasta businesses became household names. It wasn't just business anymore, it was a movement. He was proving that Africa could produce for itself. But behind the success was an engine of strategy. Dangote mastered vertical integration, a method where you control every stage of your supply chain. For example, in cement, he mined his own limestone. He produced his own packaging. He controlled his own logistics with thousands of trucks. So while competitors were stuck waiting for shipments, Dangote was always moving, fast, efficient, and unstoppable. It's like playing chess while everyone else is still figuring out checkers. But there's another secret behind his success: relationships. Dangote never underestimated the power of people. He built strong ties with business leaders, government officials, and international partners, not to manipulate, but to collaborate. He understood the African business landscape. Success here isn't just about what you know, it's also about who trusts you. And Dangote became the man everyone trusted. While his competitors saw the government as a threat, Dangote saw it as a partner in progress. He often aligned his businesses with national goals: job creation, local production, economic stability. That's how he became indispensable. By 2010, Dangote Cement was not just Nigeria's pride, it was Africa's industrial crown jewel. In 2014, Forbes listed him as the richest black man on earth, with a fortune surpassing $25 billion. And yet, he didn't stop. He never once said, "I've made it." Because for him, success isn't a destination, it's a responsibility. He kept expanding into petrochemicals, fertilizers, oil refineries, and even power generation. Each new project wasn't just about profit, it was about legacy. He once said, "We should be the ones refining our own oil, producing our own fertilizer, and feeding our own people." That's the spirit of an empire builder, not waiting for permission, but creating solutions. Dangote's refinery project alone, valued at over $19 billion, became Africa's most ambitious industrial undertaking. It promised to end fuel imports and transform Nigeria from a buyer into a producer. Many called it impossible, too big, too risky. But Dangote smiled and said, "Nothing is impossible." The word itself says, "I'm possible." Think about that. While most people fear failure, Dangote fears stagnation. He once admitted that he sleeps only 4 hours a night, because he's constantly thinking about what to build next. That's obsession. That's vision. That's how empires are made. But behind all the billions, factories, and Forbes rankings, lies something simple. A man who believes Africa deserves better. Better industries. Better opportunities. Better dignity. And that's why Dangote matters. He's not just building companies, he's building confidence in what's possible on African soil. So the question becomes, if one man can create this much impact by believing in his continent, what's stopping you from believing in your own potential? You don't need billions to start, just vision, consistency, and courage. In the next chapter, we'll uncover Dangote's billionaire mindset, the habits, philosophies, and beliefs that shaped his journey and kept him at the top when others fell. Because building an empire is one thing, but keeping it alive, that takes something much deeper. Chapter 5, The Turning Point, How Dangote Took Over Africa's Market. Every success story has that one defining moment, that point where everything changes. For Aliko Dangote, that moment came when he decided to take control of production rather than depend on importation. For years, Dangote had built his empire importing commodities: sugar, rice, cement, and flour. He made money, yes, But deep down, he realized something. You can never control your destiny if you rely on others to produce what you sell. That realization was his turning point. Instead of buying from the producers, he wanted to become the producer. Instead of shipping goods into Nigeria, he wanted to ship goods out of Africa. So, in the early 2000s, Dangote did something that shocked everyone in the business world. He invested billions into building Dangote Cement, a company that would later dominate Africa's cement industry. People thought he was crazy. Cement, they asked. It's too expensive to produce locally. Why not stick with importation? But Dangote smiled. He knew something others didn't. He understood the power of monopoly and the long game. He wasn't playing for the next year. He was playing for the next 50 years. When the first Dangote cement factory opened, it wasn't just another business launch, it was the birth of an industrial revolution in Africa. From Nigeria to Ethiopia, from Senegal to Zambia, one by one, Dangote began planting factories across the continent. By 2015, Dangote Cement controlled 60% of the entire cement market in Africa. That's not business, that's empire building. Now, imagine this. Every time someone in Africa builds a house, a school, or a bridge, chances are, somewhere in that concrete mix, there's a piece of Dangote. He wasn't just selling cement, he was literally building Africa. And here's the genius part. By producing locally, Dangote didn't just make money. He saved billions in foreign exchange, created thousands of jobs, and reduced Africa's dependency on imports. Think about it. That's not just business. That's nation building. It's easy to forget that success isn't always about finding new ideas. Sometimes, it's about improving what already exists, but doing it bigger, bolder, and better. Dangote looked at the same Africa everyone else saw, but where others saw problems, he saw possibilities. Where others complained about poor infrastructure, he built his own roads. Where others worried about government instability, he created partnerships. While others waited for opportunity, he created it. Here's the lesson, my friend. Success doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from betting on yourself when no one else will. Dangote could have stayed comfortable importing goods, but comfort doesn't create billionaires. Risk does. Vision does. Execution does. And guess what? That's how he became unstoppable. By the time competitors realized what was happening, Dangote wasn't just rich, he was too big to catch up with. He had already cemented his name, literally, in Africa's industrial history. So I'll ask you this, if you were in his shoes, would you take that kind of risk? Would you put everything you've built on the line for a dream no one else believes in? Because that's the difference between ordinary and extraordinary. That's the difference between being successful and becoming a legend. Coming up next, we dive into the unseen side of Dangote's empire. How he used influence, partnerships, and sheer willpower to dominate not just cement, but sugar, salt, oil, and beyond. Stay tuned, because the deeper we go, the more incredible this story gets. Chapter 6: The Empire Beyond Cement. Dangote's expansion into everything. If Chapter 5 was about how Aliko Dangote built his foundation with cement, then this chapter is about how he built an empire that touches almost every corner of Africa's economy. Because once Dangote dominated cement, he didn't stop there. He asked himself one bold question. If Africa can buy from me, why can't Africa produce everything it needs through me? That's when the next wave of expansion began, the rise of the Dangote Group. Dangote began consolidating his companies into a single, powerful entity, the Dangote Group. Now, this wasn't your regular company. This was an ecosystem. Cement, sugar, salt, flour, pasta, oil, fertilizer, transport, logistics, everything connected, everything controlled, everything feeding the other. If you think about it, Dangote didn't just sell products. He built a circle of wealth that kept turning money back into his hands. Let's take sugar, for example. Nigeria consumes millions of tons of sugar every year, for drinks, bread, biscuits, candy, you name it. And guess who controlled that market? Dangote Sugar Refinery. By owning refineries, distribution trucks, warehouses, and retail networks, Dangote ensured that every teaspoon of sugar that sweetened a cup of tea in Africa added a little sweetness to his fortune too. But it didn't stop there. He moved into salt production, under Nascon Allied Industries. Why salt? Simple. Because everyone uses it, from the kitchen to the factory floor. Dangote understood one eternal truth. To build generational wealth, invest in what people cannot live without. Food, shelter, energy. Those are the three pillars of survival. And he made sure his businesses covered all three. The Dangote Logistics Network. Now, let's talk about something most people overlook: logistics. How do you move sugar, salt, cement, and flour across a continent with bad roads, unstable ports, and slow bureaucracy? Dangote didn't wait for the government. He built his own transport empire. Over 10,000 trucks. Yes, you heard that right. Dangote Group owns one of the largest truck fleets in Africa. He practically became the backbone of supply chains across Nigeria and beyond. Imagine the scale of that operation. Fuel, maintenance, drivers, mechanics, warehouses, all controlled by one company. Every kilometer those trucks traveled added more value to the Dangote name. It's not just business genius, it's control of infrastructure. While others depended on the system, Dangote became the system. The great oil dream, Dangote Refinery. But perhaps the boldest chapter in Dangote's story is the Dangote Refinery project. When Nigeria, Africa's biggest oil producer, couldn't refine its own fuel, Dangote saw that as an opportunity, not a tragedy. He said, "If the government can't fix it, I will." And with that, he started building what would become the largest single-train oil refinery in the world. Worth over $20 billion, covering 2,635 hectares of land, a city of steel, pipelines, and ambition. When it's fully operational, this refinery is expected to process 650,000 barrels of crude oil per day. Enough to meet all of Nigeria's fuel needs and even export to other countries. This wasn't just a business project, it was a legacy project. It was Dangote saying to Africa, "We don't have to depend on the world can depend on us." That's leadership. That's vision. And that's why his name stands tall among global billionaires. The power of partnerships and influence. But let's be honest, nobody builds an empire this massive without relationships. Dangote understood the power of influence. He built strong alliances with governments, presidents, and global organizations. From the Nigerian presidency to international banks, everyone wanted to work with him. Why? Because he delivered results. When the World Bank needed a partner for African infrastructure development, Dangote was at the table. When the African Union discussed economic transformation, Dangote's opinion mattered. He wasn't just building companies, he was building Africa's image, the human side of the empire. And behind all this power and wealth, there's the man himself, quiet, disciplined, and surprisingly simple. He's known to live modestly compared to his peers. No loud displays, no extravagant scandals. He keeps his focus, keeps his schedule, keeps his discipline. He once said, "I like to live a simple life. I can buy a jet, but I prefer to reinvest that money into business." That's not just humility, that's wisdom. Because real wealth isn't about what you buy, it's about what you build. And that's exactly what Aliko Dangote has done. He didn't just build a business. He built Africa's future. If you're watching this right now, think about it. What's your own refinery project? What's that one dream that looks too big, too expensive, too impossible? But deep down, you know you can make it happen. Because if Dangote can do it, starting with just a small trading shop in Kano, then what's really stopping you? Coming up next, we'll explore the final part of this story, the mindset that made Dangote unstoppable, the habits, the discipline, and the vision that separated him from every other rich man. And trust me, this chapter will make you rethink how you chase success forever. Chapter 8: Legacy, Lessons, and the Call to Greatness. Every great story has an ending, but the story of Aliko Dangote is one that keeps beginning again in the lives of millions who dare to dream. From a small trading shop in Kano to the commanding heights of global business, Dangote's journey isn't just the tale of one man's rise. It's the story of what's possible when vision meets discipline. But let's pause for a moment. What truly made Dangote Africa's richest man? Was it luck? No. Was it government support? Not really. It was something far more powerful. An unyielding belief that Africa could rise from within. That's what makes his story different. While others saw chaos, he saw potential. While others waited for change, he became the change. And while most people talk about success, he built it, brick by brick, deal by deal, dream by dream. 1. The legacy of vision. When you stand before the skyline of Lagos, when you see factories humming in Tanzania or refineries rising in Lekki, you're not just seeing buildings. You're seeing the mind of one man who refused to settle for average. Dangote's legacy isn't just in wealth. It's in infrastructure, jobs, and hope. He created systems that outlive him. That's what real vision does. It plants seeds in time that grow beyond the planter. He once said, "Every morning, I wake up believing there's still more to build." That's the mindset of a legacy maker. And if you want to rise, that has to become your mindset too. Because true success isn't about reaching the top, it's about staying there and building ladders for others to climb. 2. The hard truths behind greatness. Let's be real, Dangote's journey wasn't all smooth. He faced corruption, currency crises, bad roads, inflation, sabotage, and political storms. But he didn't complain. He adapted. He learned that in Africa, resilience is the new currency. If you can't bend, you'll break. He didn't wait for perfect conditions. He created progress out of chaos. And maybe that's one of the greatest lessons you can take from this story. You don't need everything to be perfect to start. You just need the courage to begin. Because perfection never built an empire, persistence did. So, whatever your dream is, stop waiting. Start small, start scared, start broken, but start. Because one day, your consistency will silence your critics. 3. Dangote's hidden wealth. Beyond money. Let's go deeper. What really makes Dangote rich isn't his billions. It's his time, his discipline, his reputation, and his impact. You see, money is just a result. But principles, those are eternal. Dangote didn't chase luxury, he chased legacy. He didn't live for the spotlight, he lived for structure. He didn't just want to be rich, he wanted to make Africa richer. That's why his name commands respect. Because real wealth isn't counted in cash, it's measured in contribution. 4. The lessons you can apply today. Let's bring it home. What can you learn from Aliko Dangote's story? Lesson 1. Start with what you have. He began selling small bags of sugar and rice, not steel, not oil. Start small, but start now. Lesson 2. Think long-term. Don't build for likes and followers. Build for legacy. Lesson 3. Stay disciplined. You can't rise if you keep giving in to distraction. Greatness demands consistency. Lesson 4. Invest in people and systems. Dangote doesn't just own businesses, he owns networks. Build relationships that multiply value. Lesson 5. Reinvest constantly. While others spend profits, he reinvests them. If your money isn't working for you, you're still working for money. Lesson 6. Serve your continent. Don't run away from your environment. Transform it. Your story, like his, could rewrite history for your generation. 5. The call to greatness. Maybe right now you're sitting somewhere, watching this video, thinking, I don't have Dangote's money. I don't have his resources. I don't have his connections. But let me tell you this, neither did he when he started. He had something even more powerful: belief. He believed that one man could change the story of a continent. And that belief turned into Africa's largest business empire. So ask yourself, what do you believe about your own potential? Because belief is the spark, action is the fire, and persistence is the fuel that keeps it burning. Your life could be the next African success story. But it starts when you stop doubting yourself and start building yourself. 6. A message to dreamers. If you've watched this far, that means something in you connects with this story. Maybe you've failed before. Maybe you've been told your dream is impossible. Maybe you've been underestimated all your life. But let this story remind you, so was he. Dangote wasn't born rich. He became rich. And if he can do it, so can you. Because the difference between the person you are and the person you want to be is the discipline you apply today. So don't just be inspired, be intentional. Don't just watch greatness, become it. 7. Final words and outro. Before we wrap up this video, take a second to look at your screen. You see that subscribe button? If you've been inspired by this story, hit it right now and join this growing family of dreamers, builders, and believers. Because on this channel, we don't just tell stories of success, we decode the mindsets that create them. And for everyone who has already subscribed, thank you. You're part of something bigger than a channel. You're part of a movement. More incredible stories are coming your way. From Africa and beyond, stories that will ignite your vision and fuel your purpose. So until next time, remember this. Dream boldly, act fearlessly, and let your vision outlive you. Thank you for watching How They Made It. See you in the next episode.